Hi and welcome. I'm Steve Martirano, and this is the Behavioral Corner. You're invited to hang with us as we discuss the ways we live today, the choices we make, the things we do, and how they affect our health and well-being. So you're on the corner, the Behavioral Corner. Please hang around a while. Wow, where does the time go? I hang on the corner here sometimes and spout cliches. In any event, we do more than that. We welcome you again to the Behavioral Corner, where we sit on the stoop, lean up against a lamppost, see who we run into, and maybe generate some conversation that will help you better understand what this program's all about. It's inherent in the title. Behavioral is the key word. Behavioral health is the area that we are concerned with here on the corner, and that is a big, big topic. It's very often associated in the past, with us anyway, with the issue of substance abuse, treatment, and recovery. We've now expanded beyond that to take in a wider area that includes a lot of mental health issues as well. I hope you know that we are underwritten and supported by our partners in this endeavor, Retreat Behavioral Health, and you'll hear more about them a little bit down the road. The mental health piece, though, is what we focus on a lot in this month, as October, believe it or not, is upon us. Actually, I don't know. We should probably be counting in COVID time, but anyway, it is National Mental Health Month, so we're going to take a particular look at that with our guest on the corner, Will Erdman. Will is right now celebrating, or will be very shortly, 3 years of sobriety. He has a story for us about that journey, as well as the work he does now as a recovery coach, and it's bigger than that. Will, thanks for joining us on the corner.
Thanks so much, Steve. I really appreciate you having me on and giving me the opportunity to give back a little here.
Well, we appreciate your time. So here's the deal. You told me prior to us getting together that you're going to have an anniversary coming, I guess it's December, 3 years sobriety. Congratulations for that. Many more celebrations ahead. Can you take us through a little bit about yourself? Where did you grow up? What was the family like, and how did you slip into the disease of addiction?
Sure. So I grew up in the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania, a really great family. My parents have been married for like 43 years. I never wanted for anything. Private school, all the things, all the nice things as a child, sports activities, and based on what some other people experience and lead them into addiction. Like, I had an awesome childhood, so that just kind of, to me, is a testament to mental health and addiction does not affects anybody. It doesn't discriminate. I don't know. I got started drinking and using in high school just as a social thing, and I think I was always trying to fill some type of void, and that filled that void. And then, from high school into college, everything just escalated to the point where I was, daily drinking and morning drinking and using, and, managed to make it through college and do pretty well. And then when I hit, the adult world and had ultimate, freedom, that's when things really started to go downhill.
How old?
In my early 20s.
How old are you now? Well,
I'm 38.
Okay. So you're the bulk of the problem began, out of adolescence in your teen years as you grew up. You talk about this void you were filling. We've heard that so many, many times. Can you? Did you have brothers and sisters, by the way?
I do. I have one younger sister, Mary Kate.
And does she have? Has she ever had any problems with regards to substance abuse?
No, she hit the ground running. She's finishing her last year of orthopedic surgical residency and about to enter a fellowship out in California. Never had any addiction issues. So
yeah,
again,
it's the randomness. Yeah, it's just the randomness of this thing. It's why it's so not only mysterious but insidious. So the void, I've heard that so many times, filling up something. Most people, most youngsters, in my experience, who experiment with substance abuses do so early on in a social context, just as you described. Hey, this is what we do when we hang. And suddenly somebody in that group, or more than one somebody, finds their behavior accelerating, past that. You say filling a void. What kind can you articulate what it was that you didn't feel whole about that needed to be filled with drugs or alcohol?
Sure. So, like you had mentioned, I think, it started socially, that it was like what we do, it was what our friend group did. And as I got older, I think what happened was I started to do things that like weren't, based on the principles I was raised with. I started to like do, I had negative behaviors, and then I would kind of view myself as like not a good person. And then when I use and drink, I would actually do more things that I didn't want to do. And that would reinforce, like, you're a bad person.
Right.
Like, you do shitty things, like, things like that. And that, I think, was, like, kind of the void I was filling, is, like, I thought I was a bad person. I didn't identify as being, like, sick and having a problem. So that would that would make me feel better. But then I'd ultimately, it was a vicious cycle. Then I'd ultimately, like, it was, I'd do something negative or bad, and it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yep. It is, again, the endless fascination with the disease of addiction and the effect it has on us, people in general, but certainly with their mental health. You talk about, you were aware that the behavior you were engaging in was bad. You weren't blind. You didn't think it was good that you were doing these things. And yet you were powerless over the addiction. Now, we think of that in terms of, well, I don't know. Did you progress to, how far did it go, your abuse? What were you abusing at the end?
I had some time sober, like short of 3 years, and relapse and kind of bounce in and out. And then I was dating a young lady who we relapsed together after a short period of sobriety, and she introduced me in my early 30s to intravenous heroin use. And that was what my 4-year really epic relapse was about. It was heroin, crack, alcohol. I overdosed 13 times in 4 years.
Wow. So you were playing in the bigs, right? It was no joke. You were playing in the bigs.
I'm very lucky to be alive.
13 ODs. And we're gonna get into this deeper now, so I'll just hold it here for the second, but raise it so you'll know where we're going. And that is, during that process, and it's going to sound like an odd question, what was your frame of mind? What was your mental health? You're doing things that are self-destructive and going to already have led to a bad place and could lead to your death. And what was your mental frame of mind in that? That's really what we're going to focus in a little later. So when you find you've in and out of rehab, I'm sure, during this period of time, correct?
Yes, definitely.
It took many times for you. You say you've relapsed, so now you're going into 3 years. What is it about the times when you do manage to get a hold of the disease that you think is working? What point did you reach where you went, I got to try again?
So I couldn't really articulate like what happens in that. I do think, it's whatever your higher power is, God. I say God for simplicity. I do think like God intervenes in some way and allows me to just like open my mind enough to listen to something.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first time I got sober, it was like I actually went into after multiple treatments, went into an AA meeting, raised my hand, and asked for help. Coming out of the 4-year relapse and the being sober now, that's again like I'd been overdosing and in and out of treatment, and they did the empty chair, which is like a clinical group where they literally leave a chair empty, and that's like the addict that doesn't make it back. And for the first time in 4 years, like that connected with me emotionally. So I knew for years intellectually like I was a heroin addict and I was maybe going to die if I kept up like this, but it didn't like hit me in the heart till like that moment. I can't explain that other than, there's God or some higher power at work there.
Well, that process, it always, when I hear that story, and it's very familiar, I don't push it too hard because it's looking a gift horse in the mouth, it's almost beside the point, but people who are still struggling need to know that at least, or not at least, in many cases, people do reach that moment. I've heard it referred to as clarity, something like, well, this isn't working, let me try something else. So, I get that. It does remind us, though, about the mind being a very, very powerful tool, not only towards bad behavior, but towards salvation when you think about it. This led you then to your current work, I suspect, and tell us about what you're doing right now.
So I'm very lucky and very grateful. I work for two great organizations. One's Berkshire Transition Network. So that's a men's extended care facility in the Berkshires in Massachusetts, like a beautiful area. And it's a group of focused coaches like myself, skilled coaches, helping these guys kind of find like a more fulfilling life, like a life worth staying sober for, and finding a sense of community and finding a recovery plan that works for them. And then ultimately transitioning, back into the world to live. So that's, that's my full-time job. I also am a part-time recovery coach for Dynamic Care Health, which started as a tech company out of Boston, doing remote testing, so like Bluetooth breathalyzers. Then they rolled CBT, therapy-based modules in, and that seemed to help members. Then about a year ago, they really concentrated on bringing coaches like myself in to work with these members on a weekly basis. And all of the numbers across the board spikes. People were doing more breathalyzers, passing more breathalyzers, showing up to more therapy appointments. And both companies are kind of on the younger side, like, roughly 5 years. They've been, in place, and just such open-minded, like both groups are like open to feedback, looking to change, looking to help people. It's just, the work I do is amazing, and the companies I work for doing it are just as amazing.
Tell me about some of this testing. Did I understand you to say that it's being done remotely?
Yeah. So Dynamic Care, it's, the premise of it is it's an app on your phone, and then it's built on either a text-based coaching platform or, live phone calls, and then Bluetooth breathalyzer. So, you're prompted to do a test. You blow into the Bluetooth breathalyzer, and the results immediately hit the phone, which send them to our server, and then we can track all that stuff on the back end. The other component of that is a rewards-based system, which, I'm not a doctor or neurologist, so I can't get into all the brain stuff here, but it helps to rewire the paths in your brain. Getting these, kind of small, you might get like $2 or $3 for a successful breathalyzer, and then that money stacks up all month to like in the neighborhood of $150. But that reward creates a more strong positive pathway in the brain to keep doing positive things.
Right. So this isn't about trying to make money by getting sober. This is a conditioned response. Is that what you're trying to accomplish here? That good behavior is is
I would
rewarded.
say that would, if going to a meeting is helpful to you, and then like when you walk out, like the app tells you, like, you were in the meeting, great job, $3 reward, and that kind of stuff happens repeatedly over months, combined with like a skilled coach working with you to work through your recovery plan,
right?
It helps you stay on track, and it helps the brain rewire, based on being rewarded. Yeah. So like condition, like you said.
That's a remarkable app. How do people find that app if they want? Is it there at the Apple App Store, or where?
Yeah, it's available in the App Store. So if you went in and searched Dynamic Care, it'll pop up. The initial app is free, so you download it free, and then you can upgrade to the level of services that you're interested in. So again, text-based coaching or calls, remote testing. We have family support services. Pretty comprehensive. It's really a great tool. And we actually, Berkshire Transition Network, use it when folks are traveling or when they're moving out and moving into the real world. It's a great way to create another layer of accountability for them and allow them to transition fully back into the real world, but still have accountability.
Oh, it's a fantastic. I've been waiting for a long time, and I knew it was a matter of time before the, those people who sit around figuring this stuff out were going to come up with an app-based program that would help people. This sounds like a really good one. Let me ask you this. This has always been something in my head. Would it be possible to have an app with GPS capabilities now, being what they are, where someone in an active addiction or someone in recovery, but they're, worried about being triggered, could they put in locations that they know they should stay away from? And if they were to go to them, it would send maybe a message to their coach to
I'm sure, because the app already does the reverse. So you enter in, or we enter in, like, you have a therapy appointment at 101 Main Street, and the phone knows when you walk in the door and if you're on time and if you leave early or not. So I'm sure, we have a great team of engineers at Dynamic Care, so I'm sure they could figure out a way to reverse that if you walk into the bar at 103 Main Street, it
right, exactly.
triggers some emails and texts and stuff like that you're not where you should be.
Actually, what I would, if I were doing this, that's terrible. If I were doing this, I would figure out a way to have a message pop up, a video message from the person that means the most to you, your kids, your wife, or somebody, a pre-recorded message saying, "Do not, please, Dad, please," and see if that has an effect. Yeah. I just think, you know what, as we have heard countless times, there is an app for everything. We're talking to Will Erdman. He is a recovery coach doing great work, not only for other people, but in maintaining his sobriety now after a pretty rough and serious bout with the disease of addiction.
Every storm runs out of rain, according to the great Maya Angelou. Her words can remind us of one very simple truth, that storms do cross our paths, but they don't last forever. So the question remains, how do we ride out this storm of COVID-19 and all the other storms life may throw our way? Where do we turn when issues such as mental health or substance abuse begin to deeply affect our lives? Look to Retreat Behavioral Health. With a team of industry-leading experts, they work tirelessly to provide a compassionate, holistic, and affordable treatment. Call to learn more today. 855-802-6600. Retreat Behavioral Health, where healing happens.
So, Will, because we've spoken about this before, you came on the corner with us that it's National Mental Health Month. We are going to take a look at that in all sorts of various ways throughout the next couple of weeks, but this is a perfect opportunity to kind of demonstrate that there is a huge mental health component regarding sobriety. Everything you've just described strikes me as an attempt to use one of the most powerful tools we have to straighten our lives out, no matter what the problems are, and that's our mind. I mean, that's all we have at the end of the day. We only have our own ability to think and then hopefully reason our way out of any kind of problem. In your experience personally and in your work, do you find that without even thinking about it, mental health is at the forefront of these efforts?
Absolutely. So it's very common in my experience. Personally, I'm not actually diagnosed with clinical anxiety or medicated, but certainly leading into, I think my active addiction, my life was run based on fear and anxiety and stress. And that was another reason I would use to try to push that stuff out, and just, I wasn't living, I was just maintaining. And then on the flip side, the work I do now, being in the field, very commonly we see folks that struggle with those types of mental illnesses, and that kind of leads them into addiction. We work with the Center for Motivation and Change, which is probably one of the most trauma-aware treatment facilities in the country. And their, trauma is a huge lead into addiction. So when you put the drink and the drug down, that is in itself a very difficult task and takes a lot of support, as you're probably well aware. But that's really just the beginning of the work. If you are struggling with mental health issues, whether it's trauma or anxiety or whatever it is out there, especially because, being an active addiction or alcoholism kind of masks what's really going on.
Right.
And then you put that down and then we're all right, what are we actually dealing with here?
Mm-hmm. That's very widely misunderstood by the public at large. They can't understand when they hear someone who knows a little bit about this, like yourself. Well, just because you're not using doesn't mean everything's going to be okay. It confuses people. What do you mean? I thought the problem was the use. And as you point out, it's more like a manifestation of these underlying problems. It's now referred to in the field widely and has been for a long time as a co-occurring disorder, correct?
Correct. A lot of times especially if it's something like mental health that you really struggle with, you're self-medicating through drugs and alcohol. So, when you put the drugs and alcohol down, sometimes it's like actually worse because you're no longer self-medicating these mental health challenges. And that's where it's really important to have a team of professionals helping you, whether it's, coaches and therapists or doctors, whatever your team needs to consist of, having the right help to make sure that you're approaching this correctly.
Neither of us are physicians or psychiatrists, and I don't expect you to be one, but you have a world of experience, a lifetime of it. I wonder if you think at the end of the day, substance abuse is some sort of mental illness.
I don't know. That's a tough, but like you said, I'm not a doctor, and I have a very loose grasp on any kind of neurological knowledge. Certainly mental health challenges lead into addiction very often, or through year after year of, having addiction and alcoholism issues. I think you can kind of create mental health issues. It's kind of like a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
I had a friend speak the other day at a meeting for me, and she has anxiety, and she's like, I knew by drinking that I was making my anxiety worse, but then I was also able to medicate it away with alcohol at times too. So It's like the vicious cycle, as an example. So I don't know if it's actually considered a mental health. That's I think an answer that's beyond me. But certainly they go hand to hand.
That's okay. You and I are just on the corner. Who cares what people think?
Yeah.
Well, no, because I'll tell you the truth. I mean, I'd have to go look at the diagnostic manual to see what they officially say. If mental illness is behaviors or attitudes or thoughts that are making you miserable, self-destructive, unhappy, suicidal, whatever, if that's kind of a definition of mental illness, not to, over-medicalize all behavior, but I always thought something like racism, deeply hateful racism, is just a mental illness. There's no other way to describe a mind that would operate like that. And when you look at the behavior of addicts who are doing things that are clearly going to kill them, but they continue to do it, after you dispense with the physical craving, you begin to go, how in the world, what are they thinking about? That's why we talk about mental health issues. They are so important. One of the things I know that a coach is very, very concerned about is helping their client with coping strategies. What are some of the coping strategies, and what relationship do they have with mental well-being?
I think one of the most important components, kind of like the 10,000-foot view, is building community. So having a group of friends and a team of professionals around helping you through both your path, away from addiction and alcoholism, substance use, and then dealing with the mental health that, may be a result or is still present after. That's one of the most important things. And I don't know if I call it like a coping skill, but I think you're able to use that community to cope. And then on top of that, I think it's really important to find something you love or things you love to do and use those as coping skills.
Yeah. So, community is so important. I've heard stories over and over again. It is, by the way, the core value or benefit of something like AA, which strictly speaking is not a treatment for alcoholism, but a support system to abstain from using alcohol. And it's so fascinating when you think about what's the expression is misery loves company. And that's right. True. And that's true when you're in active addiction. And then it ironically turns out to be even more true and more important when you're in sobriety. Not so much that misery loves company, but sobriety loves company. It's a very reinforcing thing. And again, it goes back to the way we think affecting the way we behave. Will, and I hope you would use your experience in this. When someone is taking those first steps towards, sobriety, and they're trying to deal with that, how vulnerable are they in a mental health capacity? I mean, you got to be strong physically to resist the temptations and the cravings. Did you wake up fearful every day? What was the experience in your head as you started to build sobriety?
So I think, early sobriety is amazing, and it's probably like when my path when I was first sober, I had that community. So I had air quotes a team of advisors around me, kind of telling me what to do initially. So it's probably one of the more simple times. You're not making like a ton of decisions for yourself, and you have a lot of support. But as far as what's going on in your mind, it's terrifying, because I just, intentionally took my biggest coping mechanism for life, which is drugs and alcohol, out of the picture. How do I do anything? Like, how do I date? How do I go to the food store and deal with a long line? Like, any normal life tasks, at the end, like, everything I did in life involved drugs and alcohol. So trying to navigate life in early recovery, even when you have people trying to help you through it, can be mentally terrifying, because your coping mechanism is gone. And you have to rebuild a life with new coping mechanisms to your point earlier with the question about, coping and what you use.
Yeah, it's interesting taking the substance abuse piece out of the equation and looking at someone just suffering from mental illness in the form of things like anxiety or dealing with associated trauma. Very often people will be just medicated for that. They will just be prescribed, benzodiazepines, I guess, or whatever, to manage the mental health piece. With someone who is also trying to remain sober, that can be a tricky road, right?
Absolutely, and that's why if you're trying to get sober, or somebody listening is trying to help a family member with this path, it's really important to have really good professionals and to be fully transparent with them about the issues that you're having. If you're trying to stay sober and you struggle with anxiety and the doctor gives you a benzodiazepine, which in my mind is like alcohol in pill form, that's really not going to help you much. While it might physiologically or pharmacologically help you with anxiety, it may not be the solution to help you stay sober. But maybe it is. Like, that's why you really have to have a good team of professionals. You have to be really honest with them about what's going on.
The other aspect of how complicated this is from a societal point of view is that, particularly during down economies as the one we're facing now, which will probably deepen, is this notion of homelessness and its association with substance abuse. Too often we think almost exclusively that these people who are homeless are probably overwhelmingly also addicted to substances. While that may be true on a certain level, they are also probably far more likely to be mentally ill. Correct?
Yeah, I don't have strong level of experience with the homeless or the unhoused, but my limited knowledge, I think you're absolutely right.
Well, the idea of this app-based testing and counseling and using it as a tool for transitions into a sober life is fascinating. And as I said, we hope there'll be more work in that regard, because one of the other phenomenons here is I have noticed people with serious substance abuse issues may lose everything, family, friends, money, dwelling. They always have their phone. They need that phone. That phone connects them. The phone connects them with their high, right? If they already have a phone and they're looking to get mentally stable enough to fight addiction, something like an app-based program. And by the way, you're not suggesting that you can only do this with an app, but it certainly is. It can be a powerful use of the technology. We really appreciate you coming on and telling us about that. And before I let you go, Will, please tell people how they can get more information about the groups you work for in the Berkshires, because this program is heard all over the place, and particularly about the app, once again, where they can get more information.
So the group that I work for, the Men's Extended Care Facilities, and the picturesque Berkshires is known as Berkshire Transition Network. So you can find us on the web. And then the group that I mentioned, the app, is Dynamic Care Health. So that app is available in the App Store, and Dynamic Care Health also has a substantial website where you can click through and see more about that. So both groups are on the web. The Dynamic Care Health app is in the App Store and can be downloaded. The initial download is free, and then you kind of go from there.
Will Erdman, thanks so much for joining us on the Behavioral Corner. It's really been very interesting talking to you. Continued success in your work, and of course in your sobriety. And we'd love to have you back again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Just let me know. Again, Steve, really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share a little bit. And hopefully, if people are out there struggling, this might help someone. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. We'll see you next time on The Corner. That's it for now. And make us a habit, hanging out at the Behavioral Corner. And when we're not hanging, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter on the Behavioral Corner.